It's over here at the lean-to. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning, and we got to get one of these Suffolk rams ready to head off to a new flock. So a couple of years ago, I ended up selling a group of ewe lambs to a guy who lives in southeastern Ohio, and he's taken them. And last year he rented a ram off me, and this year he called me up and asked if I had a ram ready for him. Well, right now, all of our rams that we have used this year are still in with ewes. But I had these 3 Suffolk rams here that we picked up when we bought that flock. So I said, yeah, I have a ram. He's born in the beginning of February. It should work for him. Right now, it's like October 17th, so he should be old enough. He's showing interest in the ewes next to him. Sitting here looking at him today. Now, out of these 3 rams, there's 2 brothers, and then this other ram with him, in with these 2 brothers. He was a bottle ram. I don't like that. He's super friendly, and that's the problem because he was, on a bottle for a little bit. He'll always come up, want to check you out. And the thing is, once you put him in with a group of ewes, I'm not sure how he'll act, because if he doesn't have any fear or, any kind of sense to basically avoid you, if he just wanted to run up on you, when these rams get in with ewes, from my experience so far, it's just like a light switch. They'll act a little bit different or completely different, but I just don't want to deal with that and have him have to deal with that. So we know we're not going to send that one down with him. So I was just sitting here looking at these 2 brothers. They're both very similar. When they first showed up, they both had a look. One was just a little bit bigger than the other. And now looking at them, I actually think that's swapped around. I think their numbers are 2502, 2503. I think 2503 is actually a little bit bigger than 2502 right now. And so what I want to do is that guy's going to be here in about a half hour. I want to go ahead and get in here, get a halter on him, because I got to bring him through this middle gate between the 2 and then bring him out over here in the corner. That's the problem with these wire-filled gates. There's no man door on them anywhere, and you can't just break down the corner the way I have them wired up. So I'll have to get in there. So I wanted to get that done before he gets here. So I'll get this one loaded up, and I'm just going to put it out here in this area where we got these gates here, and I can just kind of section him off. That way everything's done. We can get a good look at him out here and make sure that's what we want to do. On. Well, this actually worked out extremely well. I was able to put the halter on him back there at the feed pan from outside the pen. He really wasn't a fan of the halter. He walked decent for as little as he's been on it. But that's the thing, him and his brother are so similar. I was checking them out. I mean, they're basically carbon copies of each other. The only easy decision is knowing that it was one of these two rams going. And that's because these two rams are out of the same ram. Their father was the same father as the ram that we're using right now with half our Suffolk flock. And so there's really not a need for us to keep them back for our flock for a full-time ram. I am holding on to one just because the last few years we've had really crappy luck, just in general, just freak accidents with these rams. So I'm always gonna, you know, basically keep that one to make sure everybody's covered, just kind of see it grow and just see what it looks like in the spring and see what I want to do with it then. Out of these two, for sure. And you know, just looking at them in general, the day we brought them home and then we're talking with the girl that had bred them and whose flock they're out of, I think this 2502, I think he was the better of the two. And then I thought he looked a little smaller than this one, but it must have been the way they're standing, because when I put them side by side, 2502 is just a hair taller than this one. And you know, in general, like I said, carbon copies of each other basically. Just a couple little tiny things. And in the end of the day, I kind of went just with kept 2502 here just because her preference, I think, was 2502. I think, you know, she thought that he was at that time better than the other one, and you know, I just kind of went with that also. You know, because she saw them from when they were little on up, so figured, you know, take that into some account. And we got him right here in the corner. I'm gonna go get a harness. We'll get him fitted up here while we're waiting. And with it being this late in the breeding season, I'm pretty much an expert at slapping these things on now. You know, in the beginning, like I had some trouble there at the first one just because it had been a while since I've used one. And it's just one of those things, like it's a puzzle that you only got to put together a few times a year. So you got to remember how to do it. And this harness, the last one it was on was our Ram Earl last year. And I'm having to significantly adjust this more than it was already set. That's just showing how much more of a front end these lambs have on them. They are about 20 days older than Earl was at this point. Little bit of time. And also I kind of changed my feeding, and these guys, Earl was on my feeding program last year from the time he was like 10 to 12 weeks old. And these guys have only been on it for 2 months, and it's basically the same feed that they were coming off of. So just shows you a little bit of difference there, and probably protein, and also the type of year it is. So I'll go through and do this with all the little tabs from these adjustments. And what I use is, I call it like vet wrap, like this 3M flex wrap or whatever. And it like will stick to itself and hold tight. That way there's no loops exposed for something to get snagged in there and get them hung up. And then I just take a piece of Gorilla Tape and go around the bottom. I also leave about 1 inch of adjustment area, which he's plenty fine there. But that way, in case anything happens, the Gorilla Tape's not down here up against this adjustment. That Gorilla Tape gets hard to get off if it's right here straight on the nylon, but it's a good little lock for him to keep that. And this 3M tape, soft, doesn't catch on anything, and it doesn't allow any loops to be exposed. Because if they're out there walking around in the pasture and you have and it was taped and you had a loop here, they could get hung up. And I mean, that's a full body harness on them. And we're just trying to avoid anything for them to get hung up on. Nothing's tied. So if they do come out, it's just a loose, you know, strap. No big deal. I just like to tape them up with that in the beginning, and it's not even that much tape. It's more this 3M tape stuff, vet wrap or whatever. I don't even know who makes it. It's more this vet wrap stuff. So I'm gonna do that with all these extra pieces. That way they're not flopping around. If they come loose later, no big deal, but I'm just really trying to avoid leaving any kind of loop. So we just got this guy all taped up. He's all ready to go. and the guy's pulling in right now, so we're right on time. So we'll check back in here once we get him taken care of and everything filled out and him loaded up. So that ram just left. We got him loaded up. He did a great job. I actually took the harness off of him out there, put the crown on it out there next to the trailer, got him all ready. Made sure that harness went on and off fine, adjusted it again, making sure everything's good. You know, I was really happy the way the ram walked with that halter on him. We really haven't had any halters on him since we brought him here. They weren't halter broke to begin with. They've had one on, but they weren't like show ready. And you know, with him putting on some more size, and that was basically, I think, either the second or third time I've ever put a halter on him. He actually did pretty good walking out there, getting on the trailer. He loaded up really well. I was really happy with him. And when we were loading him, the guy said, man, he's a really good looking, good sized muscled ram, like good big ram for his age. And I started looking at him out there and I was like, man, yeah, he really is. And you know, I was a little bit blinded just because seeing him in here with these other two every day, these other two rams he's used next to him, that's pretty much, I was used to seeing him right there in comparison to those. Once I got him out there by himself, started looking at him, I really like him. Good sized ram, really happy with him. I hope he does great for him. He's been sniffing these ewes here, all these rams have. Right now he's just at 8 months of age. So he's 8 months old. You know, he should be good, ready to go for him. That ram will be down there with him until right before Christmas. I think the weekend before Christmas I'll go down and pick him up, see how everything's going with him. You know, it's one of those things that it's just something that we've did. It's not we do a lot of. We end up usually selling a couple of rams a year to people for commercial flocks or just for their sheep flock. And at the end of the day, you know, I don't mind renting one to a person, especially since they bought some ewes off me. And, you know, it just really works out for everybody involved. But one thing with renting that ram or leasing him out, one thing that I had an issue with last year was trying to find some kind of lease contract. Throughout the cattle industry, you could find a lot of lease contracts available, a lot of them on websites you could just print off. In the sheep side of things, I think it was on the Cheviot or the Southdown site, they had a very broad lease agreement on there. And so what I ended up doing was I went between, I think it was the Angus and on the Shorthorn and that Southdown or the sheep one, and basically read through all the three of those lease agreements. Basically decided to just write up my own, made my own up, incorporating the things out of those that I liked or I thought was important, and still just to keep it extremely simple because this isn't going to be that complicated of a process. So basically in my lease agreement, I have it written out as the Suffolk ram lease will start on today's date, 10/17, and ends 12/20. We do that as a 60+ day, so that way they can cover 4 cycles, but then also me and him are in agreement that, you know, depending on weather, depending on what he has going on, what I have going on, it'll be from that day or later, just at convenience. It's not that big of a deal. And it says basically that me, the owner, is not responsible for injuries to the leasee, and the leasee hereby releases any liability from the owner for injuries sustained from this animal. The leasee will treat the animal in a humane and ethical manner, including feeding, housing, transportation, and veterinary attention that may be required, and will not permit the animal to be mistreated or abused in any way. The leasee is not permitted to sublease out the animal for breeding purposes. The leasee is not permitted to sell the animal. The leasee has a right to return the animal to the owner if the leasee changes their mind. The owner has a right to demand the return of the animal if the leasee is not providing proper care as stipulated in the leasing agreement. The leasee is responsible for all expenses incurred in lease of animal, such as veterinary, feed, transportation, miscellaneous expenditures, and any exceptions must be noted on agreement. In the case of death of the animal while in the possession of the leasee will contact the owner within 6 hours of discovery of death. It is agreed upon that the leasee will pay a replacement value placed upon the animal within 7 days of death. The rental fee will not be applied to that amount. If animal fails to be able to breed, the lessor will have the ram evaluated by a veterinarian. If the ram is found to be by the veterinarian to be at fault, the lessor will refund the cost of the lease to the leasee. So basically I just went through, like I said, those sites and picked out the items that I thought were pertinent to and what applied to what we were doing here, and the items in there that I liked. One thing that I did add to it was there was never any kind of time limit stipulation on contacting me if something was going on with the Ram. And, you know, I just thought, like, in modern technology, you can send me a text, you can send me an email, you can call, whatever, you know, within 6 hours. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. And, you know, I thought that was appropriate and would fit in there. And it's just something I like, just so that way you hear about online, especially you read about people where they're shipping animals from here to there to be, like, you know, bred or stored here in between shows and everything, and then all of a sudden, well, this animal died and I forgot to call you for a week. It's just one of those things that, like, you know, I don't think that's going to happen. But with animals, anything can happen. You know, they're a living creature out there. But, you know, I'm not too worried about the person that it's going to. It's more along the lines of just, everything's written down, and it makes everything clear for him and for me, and it's just all right there in black and white. So now, with that Ram loaded up and headed off for the next 2 months off on the other farm, we only got those 2 Rams over there. I'll adjust their feed. That's something I'm going to actually be doing for everybody in the next week, is adjusting everybody's feed down. And, you know, that should be still plenty of room for those guys. I'm going to check on them, just make sure they're still eating later today, make sure they cleared out their food like they normally do. Just because with me pulling that one out, those Rams have all been together basically since birth. And, you know, you can say animals are animals, but, like, these guys were yelling for each other as I was loading that one up. You know, so, you know, they know he's missing, but, you know, I'll just check on him because I don't want any build up to feed to be in there and basically negate what we've accomplished by making these hard feeders up there for them. So we'll just keep an eye on them, make sure everybody's doing good. But the next project we got here now is I need to get the rest of this lean-to ready for round bales for the cows and for hay storage for the winter. We already got the bank barn full of our square bales, our small square bales. We got some over at our house on a wagon there that we're feeding off the wagon for the sheep there. But again, I started accumulating stuff here. Got these water tanks, got random electric fence supplies. I got a lot of feed bags here that the next time I go get feed, I need to just load up and take with me and take back. So what I want to work on next is kind of getting this half of the lean-to here tidied up so we're ready to bring in some hay. So that's going to be the next project we're going to start here. Is I need to start getting in hay for the cattle and also hay, more round bales and stuff for the sheep. So we're going to go ahead and start working on that. But that'll wrap this one up. Thanks for watching.